Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Notion Office Hours. Just give me a heads up if you can hear me in the chat. I see we've got quite an international group, as always. We've got Florida, Casablanca, Nashville, Sussex. Very cool. Welcome, everybody. Michigan, yeah, amazing. Let us know in the polls how long you've been using Notion. It's always good to kind of get a sense of, how experienced people are. I assume with Notion for Engineers, we're going to have maybe some people who are a little bit more experienced and are kind of curious how Chris is using Notion. So today's guest, if you don't already know, Chris Hoyer is the founder of CSS-Tricks, CodePen. I have spent so many hours on your website in my lifetime, so it's kind of funny to actually get to meet you face to face. If you've ever looked up anything in CSS, you've probably landed on Chris's website. So Chris, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
So
Thank
fun.
you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about when you discovered Notion, maybe how long you've been using it for your team and the different use cases that you use it for your own life and business.
Yeah, sure. I wish I could remember like the very first day, but I think it came off of just seeing other people be so positive about it. And in fact, I think it might have been like a product hunt release kind of thing, or not like I'm just not on that site very much, but I think I was on a little, every site you visit, you have like little roller coasters of how often you're engaged with it. And I think I was subscribed at the time, just seeing what people were building. And I don't know, something about the category of sort of like note-taking apps, even though I think we could argue that Notion is much more than that, is always fascinating to me. Like, what are people, I don't know, what are people using these days? It seems like note-taking apps is like a target for developer innovation sometimes, I'll see a little one that's like, ooh, there's like a new menu bar one. I'm going to try that one. Or, ooh, this is one that supports Markdown in some cool way. I'm going to try that one. And, I use Bear too a little bit. Bear is like a Mac app for note-taking. That one comes highly rated. And I think in the early days, it was kind of like oh, yeah, Bear's cool, but have you seen this? And I was like,
there's always a new.
Yeah. And then I think there's like early things that draw you to it, like the emoji per document kind of thing is like, that's fun. And then I don't know, you get more and more into it. And I do remember that, I don't know when the exact click was, but I'm like, I could invite my team members to this, and then we could use this for, I don't know, a handful of things. And then something clicks and you're like, no, we're just gonna use this. We're just
going all in. Yeah. I'm super curious to hear from you what the process of that looked like. Like, I know you're a techie person, obviously, but I know that a lot of teams do struggle when, say, one person gets like really excited and obsessed about Notion, and then you're like, how do I get my other team members to kind of get on board with this? I'm curious if for you, if that was kind of an easy switch to kind of get everybody to use that, or what that process was like.
I kind of have cheat mode there a little bit because I'm the boss, so I can be like, I like this, we're going to use this, and then that's that. Not that everybody absolutely has an opinion, but I get a kind of an extra strong opinion, I think. It did come with a certain degree of of co-founders too, like, hey, look at this, like, what do you think? Is this cool? And then to think of like how you're trying to sell it to them is so awkward, because you're like, what we had before is kind of like nothing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, not totally nothing, but I think of some of the, because we use at the time and still do GitLab for code and tracking issues, and we things like that. GitHub included in this, of course, has like a wiki in it. And it's tempting to use that wiki because there's certain things you just need documents for. You need them for like, oh, here's how you like debug this certain kind of thing in our code base, or these are our coding guidelines for this kind of thing. And it's like, where do you put stuff like that? That's always, it's been awkward forever. It's been like, I guess we'll share a Dropbox folder and have that in there. I'd say Google Docs, but Google Docs is just so it's just forever been confusing. Like, it has its place, like so if you write a document and share it with somebody, fine, but it's not like organized in the.
It's not like an ecosystem, even though it's supposed to be. But
a mess. So we're like, okay, let's at least take the stuff we have in the wiki and chuck it over here.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, that's just a huge improvement. And then it turns out like, we could like, you know how we have meeting notes every week because we do like a weekly all hands meeting, all the engineers and everybody
Mm.
at the company. And we're a small company, so this isn't like massive stuff we're talking, but we'd like to have a document that represents these meetings that we have. There's never been like an awesome place for that. Oh, we could do that over here too. That's cool. And then like, oh, interesting. There's a calendar in here. Maybe we'll use that because certain things we do have a certain cadence to them. Like every
Right.
single week at CodePen, we publish the CodePen Spark. That's great, but we have there's sponsors for it. There's 2 sponsor spots for it. Interesting. That needs a certain degree of organization to make sure that that happens on time and that the information is findable by anybody that needs it. Was it published or not published? What's the content in there? Can we plan ahead with that content a little bit? And that's like, wow, Notion, we can easily do this in Notion. That's perfect for that. And then the list just grows and grows over time to the point where you're like, this is really useful, and there's nothing else like it.
It almost feels like it trains you to think a little bit more as you like. The more that you use it, the more organized you get, right? The more possibilities you see, the more that you use it. Like I feel like it kind of trains you to think a little bit differently. And you're like, oh, how
Right.
could I better organize this other piece of my life? How could I better do this?
Yeah, I hate to. It's true though that you start to get into this mode where like, oh, if it's not in Notion, it probably should be, because it almost makes you busy work for yourself
Right.
sometimes, because you're like, it should go over there because then I'll have it on all my devices. I can share it with the people it needs to be shared with. It's searchable. It's and even after I think basically years of usage, for me, I still have a little work to do there. Once in a while I'll find stuff that I'm like, yeah, gotta get it over there. Anyway, yeah, I'm
I
excited to
noticed if
talk to you though, who I think the stuff I've watched of yours, you use it at this kind of like deep metaphysical level that
uh, yeah, it's been a funny journey, just sharing the way that you're using it with other people, and then you can see it unlock something for someone else. And so I think it's so powerful just to see these really interesting different ways people are using it. So yeah, got to showcase different folks who have figured it out.
sure.
Yeah,
I'm just clicking around a little bit. We talked
cool. Yeah,
for 2 seconds before we started this that it's sometimes tricky to share Notion in a public setting because Notion is intentionally private. People can't see your documents unless you really take steps to make them public. And
yeah.
even when you make them public, they don't see it quite the same way you do. So anyway, I can't just click through every single document here and show you everything because it's too.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's my underwear you're showing there.
Uh, that's a funny point too. Like even when I consult on this too, people are quite embarrassed. They're like, "Oh, I feel like I'm showing you like, it's a very private thing to show people your feelings of disorganization." And they're like, "I'm so sorry, like I'm really messy." I'm like, "No, it's fine. It's very easy to move information around. We'll bang it into place. It's gonna be fine."
Yeah, we're gonna do this. It's all good. I
Awesome.
think of that as kind of as important. I wouldn't. It's not that like ugliness or or organizational problems that bothers me in this case. It's the private information thing.
Y-
But I like how Notion. It's almost like please do not be afraid of being sloppy. I feel like
Yeah.
Notion is just better than not. Period.
Yes. I love that you said that. I think it, especially those that suffer from perfectionism, there's that feeling like I want to pre-plan my space, and people do, they're mapping it out in advance. I'm like, don't worry about it. Like you'll figure it out. The more that you use it, you'll know what you need it to do and how to organize it.
Yeah, you can make kick off a private document that could just be anything. Just do it, just dump it. If your entire collection of stuff in Notion was just a flat top level document, like chunk of
Yeah.
document, that's still useful. You can still search it, you can still share it, you can still organize it later. I would think like it's nice to have some training and some ability to know what Notion is capable of, but even at its most basic usage, I find it useful.
You gotta explore. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a shared, if I was like, I have this private document and just me and you wanted to do some planning, I would just come in here and I would look for you, and I would just, find you and invite you to it, and you could accept it. And then we'd be collaborating on a document. Like how rad is that? Just that invite system to me is like just tremendously easier to use than anything else out there.
Yeah, and I think it takes people a little bit to wrap their brain around, but the idea that you can have, private tasks, like a database that only lives inside your private, that you can embed in shared pages as well, but you will still be the only one that sees that. So there's a lot of interesting creative ways you can collaborate, work with a team member before you finalize something, right? So it's like if you were just sharing one document, it's going to show under shared, but it's not going to be in the main workspace until you want it to be. So you do have a lot of flexibility with how you can collaborate with folks.
Yeah, yeah. I like that, like I don't even know what, Notion or CodePen is like a team of 7 at the moment. I only know what's public in the workspace and what I have. But I assume that everybody else there has their own stuff going on. They probably have documents just shared between each other that I can't see. It's kind of like
Yeah.
having private channels and Slack and whatever else. I really think of Notion as that is, it's kind of like there's this group of 4 products that make up an engineering team at the moment. It's like you got to have a code thing like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or something, but generally GitHub, right? That's like the best in class tool for code stuff. Then Notion is like a living archive. I feel, well, we'll talk about Notion at the end, but there's like some way to talk more real time, like Slack probably. There's
Right.
other stuff, but Slack's like the best in breed tool. People generally use Slack. And then there's you need something that is actually real time, like where you're looking at each other, and people use Blue Jeans and whatever else, but generally people use Zoom. In this case, this is like a it's not, Zoom isn't quite right for this because it has other requirements, but generally people use Zoom. That's the best in breed tool. Although if you don't use it because of they've been in the news a bit lately, I wouldn't blame you. But still, you know what I mean? It's just generally thought of as the best in breed tool. That's how Notion
Yeah.
is too. It's like, it's the 4th thing in the,
Mm.
in the group tool set for an engineering team.
And so for you, you said it started with documentation and then kind of evolved into meeting notes.
Yeah, right. I think that probably, yeah, I really like it for meeting notes too. And for us, it's kind of it's two things. It's like, we have like a kind of standard all hands meeting, which was, I can kind of like look at what on our all hands is not person by person, it's project by project. So every
Mm.
single week on Monday, we go through all the projects and talk about them, which is a relatively new thing for us. We used to go person by person and talk about what they were doing, and we kind of switched over to that. And we did that on purpose. That's just one of our, that's just inside baseball for us. But we didn't like losing the person by person thing. We just moved it to Notion instead. So the idea is that you still like track all the stuff that you as a person did throughout the week, but you do it like in a Notion table, or I struggle to know what do you call them, because a table is just a view, and it's
Yeah.
weird to call it a database because it's like, I guess
You're
that,
like, it's technically not a database. Yeah.
but it can be a list and it can be a calendar and it can be all these things. But you know what I mean? One of those things.
Yeah.
And a lot of us do it like day by day. We just have a table, and then an entry is a day, and you talk about the stuff that you did in that day. And to some of the degree, that's for personal accountability. It's for company-wide accountability. And it's just interesting to see what people are working on, because you don't like go into Slack and be like, today I updated a blog post. Like maybe you do, but that feels a little like announcy about what you're
Right.
doing. So instead, you just kind of log the work that you do, and people check in on each other, and then use commenting and stuff in Notion to to check in. And so that's great for me as kind of a boss, that I can look in at what everybody else is doing and kind of chime in on what people are up to and stuff. That's tremendously useful. I think that's 50% of what's awesome for Notion for us,
Right.
or 48 or something, because the other 48 is, I'd like to have a 4% left over for little thing. But the other one is just project planning period. So as an engineering team, you need to have like a base document that is the project that's being worked on. And probably that's in the Kanban structure. What do you call that? A list or a board?
I think they call it board view. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a Kanban, whatever. And so there's, in a project manager, I wonder if there's one I can bring up that's not.
Yeah, we had a question. Orlando was asking, how can I use Notion to register project progress? And I'd be curious to know. You may not be able to share all of yours, but I know your content calendar kind of shows.
Content calendar is interesting. That I wish. Let's see if I can find one that's
shareable.
Yeah, right. I mean, they all are to some degree, but not always. Let's see if I can kick this off again. Will it remember? Uh-oh, it's spinning.
Oh no.
Okay, you got me. I'm alive.
The suspense.
So can you see behind there? That's what I'm intentionally trying to hide. I'm so sorry.
Gotcha. No,
there's like a big table of all active projects at CodePen. There's a whole bunch of them. It has stuff in there like who's on it, what stage is it in, what's it related to, when's it shipping, stuff like that. Now I click open one of those and you get the kind of like the modal view thing in Notion, and you can kick it open as a page as well, which I often do because I feel like it's better with the back button and stuff if you do this. So this is what it looks like when you have like a table row open. I apologize if I don't have the best language for this, but you know what I mean. Like this is a table view of it representing a row, but there's a Kanban inside this. So this is like this whole thing is part of a Kanban, and it's got a Kanban in it. I love stuff like that in Notion. That's like holy nested party.
Well, because each project then can have a totally different kind of process or kind of its own requirements, right? Totally.
And so this is common for us, is that we'll have a project. This document probably, for most projects, it has tons of stuff in it. And in fact, I could show some of that stuff in a moment here. But usually the beefiest part of it, once a project is kicked off, is then ultimately like a task board. And we'll often use a really simple 3-column thing. Like this is some stuff that needs to get done. You come in today and you start working and you're going to tackle the database stuff right away. Just drag it over. You're on it then. We might even flush this out. I might put myself on it, and then you can see yourself on it. But that has to do with visibility of stuff in here. This is the kind of stuff you should take your courses for. Because sometimes you can't see yourself by default here. Tags, you have to like change view stuff to
right.
But that's nice for us to know. And then it's like, if I didn't finish it, maybe I'll leave it there. Maybe I'll add some comments about what's going on here. I like that kind of approach. Or if I'm giving up on it, I'll drag it back. If I finish it, I put it in completed. We might have a 4th column sometimes that ends up being like, you know what, we're going to call that a stretch goal. Like it's not required for release, but it's not, so the project could be considered complete without it finishing or something. But all of our projects have this general structure of ultimately being boarded out into tasks. As it keeps people honest, it's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to do one of these things,
There were some comments in the sidebar that I'd be curious to get your opinion on. The only thing missing in Notion is the automation. Can't wait for the API automation. And so I'm curious if you feel like you're ever held back by the fact that Notion doesn't have a functioning API yet. And are there things that you specifically are looking forward to when the API comes out? Oh, that'll make it way easier to do this or integrate with Git. Like I'm curious your thoughts on that.
The number one thing I think of is that like how close to a website Notion already is. If you make a document, I'll do it, or maybe I have it, this brain dump one I had, this is already a beautiful looking document. You add a cover, you add this cool emoji, and you start talking about stuff. Or here's a classic one, like front end developer. We are hiring at CodePen, like this is a great looking document already. If I and I wanted to have a URL to it because I'm going to share it with the world as our hiring document. That's real easy to do. I flip on share to web and I grab the URL and share it. But like, look at what the URL is.
Yeah.
Gnarly, Like, that's not great, you know?
That's not friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather have it at this URL, codepen.io/jobs. Like, I'd rather, like, be able to grab the content from this page via API probably and use it elsewhere.
Right.
And as soon as they have that API, you're gonna see a proliferation of, like, connectors to use Notion as a CMS to publish it elsewhere. There's already a huge market for that. Look at Contentful and Sanity and all these places that are like, put your data here, and then you can grab the content out of it and use it elsewhere to build your Gatsby site or whatever the heck it is. That's what you'll see Notion becoming, and I think that's really kind of appealing, you know. But people will think of 10 million billion other things to use the API for. But I just think that, like, using it as a CMS is a big one, you know.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is people are already kind of, doing that with Fruition Site and Super and like Conrad Lynn. We just did a session, was it 2 weeks ago? Just crazy ways that people are pushing the boundaries.
They need to be on their toes, because as soon as the real API comes,
it's going to change.
They got to rewrite it all or whatever, you know.
It's going to be
but
a bit
it's been
fragile.
Forever. It's been years, but there's, as far as I know, Notion's still talking about it. They're still publicly alluding to the fact that they're going to have an API. They haven't backed off that yet.
Yeah, they've built it into the pricing plan, so you can see that I think the paid team account includes API access. So they're definitely putting it out there.
So close, so close.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
That's cool. Yeah, but I'm looking forward, and that's just read access. If they're going to have write access too, that's another whole level of interesting stuff too. Like maybe a Wufoo form can make a ticket in a board, right? So now it opens up this idea that you could do customer support better through Notion. And things like that. I would use it for that. As a matter of fact, you know, because one of the apps that Notion replaces, which is a whole interesting topic we could have, to me, it replaces this whole slew of apps. For example, I have a podcast, ShopTalk show, that we take questions in from people, and people submit a form. And then for a long time, we just use Trello, because, you know, I think Trello is the original app that proved that Kanbans is like a good way to work. And in fact, I'd probably still be using it if it wasn't for the ability to put boards in Notion. But Trello has pretty robust APIs, so they can take a form entry and make a card in Trello easily. And to open that up to Notion would be pretty rad too.
A couple questions popping in that, may or may not be on this topic, or, depending on whether or not you can share some of this stuff. We do have a lot of questions around, how do you manage team and personal tasks and knowledge? So, I mean, you could answer this for yourself in terms of, are you managing your own stuff, whether it's like things you're reading, as well as then in the same place that you're kind of managing team tasks?
Yeah, that's a good one. So we'll come back to this. I think this project planning thing might be of interest to some people, but I definitely have, first of all, I have a bunch of workspaces. I don't know if a lot of people do, or if this is a medium amount or what, but breaking up by company and team that I work on makes a lot of sense, right? So CodePen, CSS-Tricks, ShopTalk. But then I have my personal workspace too. It's just me in there. You can see one member. I'll see if it opens up. I keep notes on like video games I'm playing, and my camping checklist, and my best pizza in my town list, and even just really lame lists of like bags I'm interested. I'm like trying to buy a new bag. Look at how sloppy that document is. That's who cares though? It's a list, cool. I was buying a new banjo recently. Did all my research in Notion and put videos and pricing and stuff in all here. I thought that was kind of fun. That's just fun for me, because I think it's one of the just easiest places to do that. It's like, I don't know, then I'll just live around forever, and I can always just make an archive document and get rid of it if I don't need it anymore or whatever. But it's cool. And then if somebody's like, hey, you got a new banjo? Like, what was your process? I can be like, boop, here, check out my document, love that,
I definitely did that when I was researching live streaming, and it was like, what lights do I have? What mic, whatever. And then there's a document after you've done all that research that you can share with someone else who can also kind of fast track, right?
Yeah. And so, I have this on the web, and I have it on my phone, and I have it everywhere, it's kind of cool. I can make little, I'm working on this website is for a friend of mine who passed, sadly. And this is a planning thing with a unique group of people to build like a memorial site for him. So I can kick off a new Notion team, do that, and do all the planning with him there. So that's wonderful for us too. What was that? Did that answer it, or was there more?
I
Talk
think
about
I think he was just asking about personal versus team
I'd say
task management.
you don't need another workspace. You could just have private documents because of the power of Notion, but I kind of like having them separate for some reason. I can't explain entirely. I know that
Yeah,
search is scoped to workspaces, so
right.
that might be important.
And I think most people overlook something that I love about Notion is the ability to make custom dashboards. So I have a dashboard that includes all of my workspace tasks, and then I actually pull in task databases that live inside of other workspaces. So as long as you have
No
permission for those
way.
workspaces, you can embed their master task databases so that you can see all of your tasks in one document, even if those tasks
Really
live
cool.
somewhere else.
That's really cool. I didn't know you could do that.
And you can do that with your private tasks too. So let's say you are sharing a document, or let's say, you're in one of those other workspaces, but you want to bring your task database into that other space. You can embed it in there, but whoever you're sharing it with won't see it because it's actually private. It'll just appear blank for them. So there are some interesting creative ways you can put the data that you need in the same page without kind of worrying about, oh, someone's going to see my private task. So there's a million and one ways you can set this up. There's no one right way to manage your personal and business tasks in the same place, but you have a lot of options.
Yeah, don't you love that? I think there's this balance between Notion being kind of unopinionated about the way that you set things up, but it's not that it's unopinionated as an app entirely.
Yeah,
Just the structure of this document alone. It's like, oh, I want the header to be bigger. Too
it's like,
bad.
too
Too bad,
bad.
you know?
You got 3 fonts. Take your
Yeah.
pick.
Right, which is nice in that they look nice. Like you cannot make an absolutely terrible looking Notion document. It's just like not possible, which is great because, something like a Google Doc it's almost the opposite. It's like you cannot make a good looking.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's funny.
That's funny. Oh, somebody's asking about Pizza and Ben. I don't know. The general favor is Pizza Mondo. So check that out, Marcia. This was big for us when because there's so many projects on an engineering team. We have this kind of concept where you might think of a project that you're about to work on. Sorry if I'm just going to steal this and run with it for a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. You might have we're going to redesign the app. That's a little big for a project. I would still organize it all in CodePen certainly, but I feel like generally a project of that scope is it's going to require a parent organization and then lots of mini projects along the way. And I'd also encourage you to not ship all that at once anyway. Regardless of what we're talking about with Notion, I feel like just modern development encourages you to ship smaller pieces and evolve a little slower and ship more often. It's just less risky. It's more rewarding for the people working on it, etc. But anyway, I wouldn't put in our project, we would never have a project that big in our project planning because it's just too big. So and then some things are a little too small, just this header needs a tweak. I'm not going to make a project planning document for that. It's just a little one-off side thing and whatever. It may not even hit Notion at all, although it probably will in some way. But there's this whole world of medium-sized projects that need kind of a more structure to them. So that's an example of this, we're going to redesign rebuild the sidebar or the user menu or some templating feature or something. Or somebody, and that might come from me, or it might come from a group decision, or it might come from just one engineer just being like, I want to do this thing. But they would take, in order to have that not be a mess, they'd take a template like this, which is totally dependent on how your company operates. But I thought this was give it some structure, and then have all these different stages in this one document that we can use. So you'd grab this document, literally just duplicate it and remove some cruft from it that you don't need, because it's just like reminders and stuff, and then talk about stuff. So when you're going to kick off a project, for us, it's kind of like before you even start thinking about the code and the design and all this stuff, I want you to do the work of justifying why that thing exists at all. And there's a teeter-totter of that too, whether is it both good for us as a business, is it both good for our users too? And if you can't talk about those things, it's probably not a good project. You need to talk about those things first. And these are can be opposite to each other, because it could be like, I think we should, put an ad on this page. Well, that has no user success qualifications, but it might be great for business. So it might proceed just based on that alone. Or there might be something that makes a pro feature free or something. Well, that's not super great for business directly. It's hard to talk about that, but it might have great user success. So so one of these two things has to have high volume. And then we have this checkbox where we have to, we might even comment, highlight this thing and then talk about it right on that and say what did we talk about? Even if it's a Zoom call, we'll probably still use this and talk about it. And then don't check this off until we actually agree. So don't keep moving in this document unless everybody's on the same page. Because I don't know about other companies, but we've had trouble with that, of projects moving along where not everybody understood what was happening, that the project existed at all, or what we agreed on, or what, so it's the Notion helps us in this way. Make sure that everybody is okay, I get it. It has this agreeable level of scope, and this is why we're doing it, and thus it's kind of allowed to proceed as a project, And then so is that interesting to anybody?
Well, one thing I was going to comment on it that I really liked was that little call out about the blame-free zone. I think even these documents are a chance to kind of encourage a certain culture, even at your own company, right? You're encouraging people through the way that even you present this document. It's not just so literal. You're actually kind of building in that language into the template itself, which I think helps, encourage more of what you want.
Yeah. I think I put that there. It was I don't want you to, just because you think this idea is weird, or we never talk about it. It's still you can make this document still. It's probably good that you do. Then it's findable and all that. And then, assuming that it's a pretty easily justifiable product and we all agree on that, we're kind of design led, and that let's not, think about the database migrations first and then build the product based around the data that we have. We never do that. It's always what's the perfect design for this feature, thinking about how the users use it, and then we'll do the engineering around that ideal scenario. So it's always going to be a balance anyway. But then what's cool about the design, though, is that I think people understand things a lot better. Generally, I know people learn in different ways, but usually when people can see a mock-up of a feature, that is the ultimate, we all agree, yes. And that's a moment where you're going to get the most feedback. You're going to get the most oh, I see. Well, we're going to have to do this with the data then, or something. So having that be this feedback thing that's kind of agreeable before you move on to development is big. Development's always our biggest stage, though, which has these kind of sub stages. And it's important to have these in the document because it's tempting to jump into one particular aspect of development, kind of forgetting the others. So it's nice for us to have these subsections in here, be okay, as we move and as we kind of agree with this stage, it's almost like before you actually do the development, there's this sub phase of talking about the development and agreeing on that, and then you can Kanban the thing. So wait to Kanban it until you do that. And then there's all these other stages, then you got to QA it, then it's got to go out, but going out can be tricky. And then it's got to make sure it has a marketing thing that's been agreed upon and stuff. And usually by the time we're this far along in a project, that stuff has shaken out a little bit anyway. But this was a useful thing for us, And this is a manifestation of not just it's almost like we didn't just we're gifted this thing from, this is a good way to work. This was us fixing a problem. This was us okay, these projects have gotten real messy and it's caused some problems, so we're going to do it this way now,
Yeah, I love that. Because again, I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to feel like they've got this clean space right out of the gate, and they're kind of afraid to make a mess. But I think, Notion is a chance to work towards something that helps you, and it's not going to be perfect out of the gate.
Yeah,
that's great.
I wonder do you have a good strategy for? Sometimes it seems like there's you got these favorites, which are okay,
Hmm.
It's hard to do, and then if you need two documents open at the same time, you got to do this like new window thing and go side by side. I wonder if that's in Notion's future someday as some kind of like almost like tabs, but the tabs could be cross workspace or.
Right. I know someone was asking about tabs in the corner. I mean, one thing again that I do is I create these dashboards. So I'm pulling in, like I'll pull in my knowledge hub, I will pull in my resources, I pull in everything. So my project actually has lots of embedded databases inside it, master task database, knowledge hub. So I try as much as possible that everything that I need to do that project is actually living inside that page in some way, whether it's a database embed. So I very rarely have to click around my space. And that's just personal preference. So I create
Pretty
these
rad. Personal
dashboards.
dashboards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that it kind of presupposes then that most of the work you do in Notion, you database up, right? You kind of avoid doing documents that aren't in a database.
Or if the documents themselves live inside of it, like projects is a database, every project is an entry in the database. And within those entries, there's going to be pages inside of that
Right.
project itself.
That seems smart to like just start with the database at the top. That way everything's in a database from the beginning.
Yeah, because then everything has properties that I can connect. Like, this template that you've got would just be a database template that I can say, oh, it's got this timeline, it's got this status, it's got like who's the owner of it or whatever. But again, that's totally personal preference. In some cases, I kind of like the simplicity of this. Like there's no figuring out what's connected to what. Like you're not going to get lost. It's quite obvious. Yeah.
Everything that's an entry then when you're looking at it in this view starts with this huge block of all of its properties, which is that's fine, but yeah, it doesn't have this kind of cleanness to it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, cool.
I can check out some of the questions. I know that a couple popped in along the way. Some of them may be from earlier, but maybe we can go through a couple of them and see if they connect, and then we can maybe check out your publishing schedule. Okay, is it possible to create a tag/questions in a page to address later in each Notion project or code and list all of them? I know there's a way to create relations in a table, but I'm looking to create a tag in Pages.
A tag in Pages.
Is it possible to create a tag/questions in a page to address later in each Notion project?
Yeah,
so
kind of like, I don't know, there's something that needs to be addressed on that document. Like what would you do? I might just like leave a comment on it, but I don't know if that's quite.
Yeah, inline comments might be easy. Yeah, often I'll even have questions as like checkboxes too, just in a document. And so if I'm working with my assistant and I've got a bunch of questions, we can kind of like address them and then check those off as we go. I don't know that. I'm not sure how the tagging would help you in that case.
I mean, Notion is so flexible that you could be like, this like needs illustrations or whatever, and then it's hopefully people just see it's not like going to programmatically block this in any way, but
yeah,
it becomes like a to do, or I could be like, hey, Jeff, make sure to look into the sponsor for this one or what. And I love too that you can inline mention pages, right? So if there's a page that you want to reference, you can say @ and type the page name, and you can very quickly kind of link to other pages as well.
Yeah. So there's lots of options.
That's really
and I know again, this is everything's personal preference with Notion, but I actually have a master tag database. So anywhere that I would use a tag, I actually link relationally to my master tag database. So that was almost like this beautiful research hub, like productivity is going to link to the people that talk about productivity. It's going to link to any articles I've saved related to productivity, any courses, like everything kind of becomes centralized with this master tag database.
Right.
Maybe Notion will eventually kind of build that kind of functionality where you could see across all of your workspace anything that I've tagged with this tag. But I feel like that might be overkill inside of a page in this context of looking at like questions related to a project. I would just put those questions directly inside the project.
I already screwed up by making this a page, right? So you'd go, how do I pick a page once I've actually made it a type of a page?
I make it a database. So yeah, I would type in tags and I would just select table.
It's already a document,
But if you delete that, you can actually turn it into a database.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and then just click table or whatever.
Oh, right here. Yeah, there we go. So it's a table, and this is how you do it. You have like a master tags thing. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And
And then
I built that as I
right?
went. It's not like I
Yeah.
went through and was like, oh, what is every possible tag I could use? I only just add to it by connecting it to other databases as I went. And so it has like grown over time into this like glorious
Yeah.
database. So it's pretty
So if
cool.
anybody thinks that it's not really a database, it's like it actually is a real database. The fact that I can do relational things is pretty cool. That makes it more capable than, I don't know, Firebase or
Interesting.
Mongo or
Yeah.
something that's not relational. That's just key value. This is relational, so it's more like MySQL, you know. Pretty cool.
Pretty nerdy. A couple other questions that popped in. Okay, how do you handle onboarding new team members so that they get productive and feel comfortable with your team's Notion setup?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of good, but it's also like I'd probably do it in person. I'd probably do it on a Zoom call and just be like, click this, click this. But I'd also not worry about it a ton and be like, just poke around in there because I think it's with the sidebar setup and stuff. It's somewhat self-explanatory. You know, it's like I don't know, click the thing, look at the document, see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to get people's like I'd have to react to what they thought was confusing in a way, you know, and
Interesting.
rather than being like, here's a checklist of things that I think you should know. I'd rather just wing it, you know, be like,
Right.
not to leave them hanging, but
But no, like you said, you did some kind of, whether it's in person or via Zoom, like you just kind of give them a, basic walkthrough. In some cases, I know organizations do have like a team wiki or a homepage or like, welcome new hire, here's what you need to know. And it's like, creating a new project, use the new project template. And as much as you can, just kind of building in that friendly language so that it's really
totally
clear,
have that. But
you
I
know?
find it like, like it was even my temptation to have this be up when this video started, but I'm like, I never use this page. Like,
Uh,
it's our team home
Interesting.
fine. I don't mind that it matter. Like it's an organizational place, but it's almost like a junk bin. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
not quite, but it has been on other projects of mine. Nobody references this. This is not useful. They reference the all hands, they reference projects and support and calendars and stuff, but just this generic homepage place. I'm glad that we have it and stuff, but it's definitely not a highly active place, you know.
Love
Sounds
it.
like yours is though. I'm tempted to follow your lead and make my personal dashboard of stuff, but it seems like the prerequisite to that is some databasizing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could check out the office. We did a pretty long office hours called contextual dashboards, and like I have one called Focus, right? That just like if I just need no distractions that I need to focus, that is pulling in all of my master tasks embedded in different ways. So I have recurring tasks at the top, my tasks by energy level and by date. So it's like, what are today's tasks by high energy, low energy, need to delegate kind of thing. And of
Wow.
course, that's based on my own workflow, but it's just kind of an example of like, if you only want to zero in on what's most important, I have a focus dashboard. I have a gardening dashboard that just pulls in tasks that are like tagged with gardening. And so, you have the freedom to kind of make whatever you want. I actually spend most of my time in my weekly agenda. So my weekly agenda has an embed of my meetings databases. It's got my master task database. It's got my knowledge hub. Show me anything that hasn't been summarized in the last 7 days. So it'll surface like articles I've clipped in the last week that are kind of hanging there that I said I wanted to,
Mm.
read but haven't read yet. But that's
I
based on my
use that
workflow.
too, by the way. I think that clipper is pretty cool. I have a My Links. It's a private document, and I think that was the default when I
Mm,
downloaded the clipper was and anytime I'm reading, and I use it not like I want to read this later, although it is that, of course it's that, but because I'm a publisher too at CSS-Tricks, I tend to not click that button unless I think there's some chance that it's going to make a good link post.
mm,
So I click it, and then sometimes I'm like, like, is this enough? I think what I'm going to do is tag it and then group them, and then maybe if it's not enough alone, I'll like make a link post later that links to a number of them together. I almost don't care that it grabs the content of the article, but I think a lot of people do care about that. It's kind of an interesting aspect, right? That it yanks the actual text
mhm.
of the article too. I don't really need that. I almost like prefer to just click and go read it there, but that's cool. I only because I like maybe irrationally worry that this table is like enormous and somehow gets slow or something.
Right.
I don't know that because there might be 10,000 things I've clipped in here. Like, and so once in a while, I like one time I even had to like cleaned it out, but that might have been just irrational. Like, does it need? And then I have just this one thing. Like, if I make a link post, I'm almost afraid to click it because it'll just disappear, right? Because the filter is not used is not checked. But
Right.
that's how I trim this down. I'm like, oh, I really got to get through this document. I'll come in here, write some posts, which then end up on the publishing schedule, of course, and then I'll just click checked, and that's my way of like feeling good about myself by trimming down this list. Not nearly as advanced of filters that you have, but
To each his own, right?
yeah, but that's
It's got to
been
work for you.
super useful. Like, it's to the point where I can't even remember what I did before.
Life before Notion. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, did I just email myself? I think I did a lot of times, and then that email just sits in there just like as this, maybe I'll do something with this at some point.
Someday, maybe.
I'm
Yeah.
actually good with email. Like, I'm not one of those like 10,000 emails in the box kind of thing. I stay on top of it, but it feels good to get stuff out of there when it can be, when there's clearly a better home for it elsewhere.
For sure.
Yeah.
Did you want to showcase some of your publishing schedule? Because I know you use it pretty heavily for keeping on top
this is
of.
just good. I think the thing that's worth knowing here, and you already know this if you watch your videos and stuff, is that different views are different for different people. So this is what I like to see. I like to see what's coming up. Today's the 12th. There's nothing on the 12th. That means we published everything that we're going to publish today, and that's interesting to me. So as the owner, I might be like, I wonder if we should squeeze something else out. It's pretty early for a Friday to be done, or that kind of like thing. And we don't publish on the weekend, but here's Monday, only 2 things. Interesting. It looks like to me, I can just get a glance at this and see that our schedule is a little light and that I should probably work a little harder to flush out our schedule, and then it doesn't push particularly far out. But this is interesting because, we pay our writers too. So there's another structure there that happens.
Right.
And so there's a view for unpaid, meaning that our, accounting person that handles this can just click over to this view real quick and see who needs to get paid. And when they pay it, then they can say that it's been paid. So that's just super useful. This is the source of truth for that knowledge. It's not just like, I find if it's not, you won't do it. Like, if it's just like, if, for a minute, for example, this is really esoteric, I guess, but we're using this app at CodePen called app queues, and it handles internal messaging. So if you wanted to like show users that fit these characteristics of your app, this thing that points to this thing that says, hey, check out this new feature or something, it builds that and puts it in your app. It's really pretty cool how it works. And we thought, we'll track all of our flows in Notion, and so when we make a new flow in app queues, we'll go put it in Notion. But it's like, then all your Notion is then you needing to manually keep something up to date that is the source of truth is actually elsewhere. It's the actual that app. So you won't do it. You just won't, unless there's like real value in putting it over a Notion too, that you need to do it for some reason. So
yeah,
So we just abandon it, and I think that's okay. I think there's a trial and error is like going to happen in here. Be like, was that document actually useful? Cool. Was it not? Oh well.
Are we using it? No. Okay.
Very useful. We need the lead editor keeps this up to date mostly. And so he's making sure this is good, and we can talk about stuff, and we'll have conversations about what should roll when, and Notion comments in here. And then it's also nice to see like, what went out last week or whatever. You can just switch the formatting and see stuff, It's kind of cool.
And one thing I typically recommend to folks, especially if you've got multiple people on a team, is that publishing schedule becomes a thing you can embed inside your own publishing dashboard. So if you have someone who's like just responsible for paying people, that person can have a publishing page with their name, like Dave's publishing schedule or whatever.
Oh, yeah. We do
right?
that
Re-embed that. And then you default to their view and have the filters to be like, only show me whatever, so that each person doesn't even have to click on the view. You're only seeing the stuff that is most relevant to you, right?
Totally. I think that's amazing. Oh, look, my wife is literally viewing this page as we speak. That's great.
Creepy what you can see.
She's not viewing this page, but this to a certain kind of publisher who's looking at this, they might love looking at this calendar view to see the kind of relative weight of the publishing of different pages and stuff. A calendar view can be tremendous for that. Notice that I just had to
Absolutely.
make this, though. It's not particularly useful to me. I don't
Mm.
so I don't use it. So I won't keep around Chris's favorite view because it isn't my favorite view. But yeah, I love that. I love having different views for data. That's one of the most powerful things around, I think.
And related to what Gail was saying in the sidebar, she was saying different views on major master databases have been essential for me to balance the simplicity of inputting tasks, notes, etc., not feeling like you're just loading up your digital desk, right? Because I never go to my master task database because that's just going to have everything in there, which is not helpful. It's like, show me what I've got on deck right now, what's most important. So it's like you almost have to design these ways to like reduce that overwhelm. So you're not seeing like, oh my gosh, everything we've ever published. It's like, no, what's upcoming? What's this week? What needs attention, right?
Yeah. Love that. This came in useful recently. Remember, I was talking about app queues and the different flows we had. I wonder if I can click around. This should we had this like marketing messages thing that started as a board view thing. And it was like these things that we wanted to teach you about CodePen. And we're like, this is like an attempt at marketing. Like, let's think of a million things that we could tell you about it. Because sometimes at CodePen, we're like, gosh, this app is so complicated. There's so much things you need to know. How can we do that? This is almost before we had app queues. It's relatively new, which is just great for us internal education of how the app works. But we have a pretty good Twitter following. So let's use Twitter too. So let's tell people about how CodePen TV works. And we'll basically like write the tweet in here, and we'll put resources and images and videos and stuff that we could use for the tweet. And then we'll say that we tweeted it, and we'll put links to when we tweeted. And then if it comes, because Twitter is so ephemeral, like, yeah, I could tweet this again next month and that's fine. Like I should tweet it again next month because that's just marketing happening all over again. So we can kind of move these back and forth between this Kanban view, but then it's like, then we got app queues and we're like, you know what? The best place to tell people about a feature is when they're close to using that feature. It's not Twitter. Twitter's like way over here. We can still use that too, but all of these marketing messages that we spent all this time building, a lot of them should be incorporated somehow into the app. Be like, let me tell you about these features inside the app in an educational way. And it made this Kanban view less interesting. It made it like a less good way to organize this content, because it was like, I don't care if it hasn't been written or if it's been tweeted or whatever. Like, this is not the right organizational model anymore, but it can just sit here. Because instead we're like, at first we tried list view because we're like, I actually don't care that much about, like, it was Marie and I, the one that works for me, was we just started going through these and started looking at it, and then we started, actually list view is nice because there's just nothing here. It's just clean, but actually we ended up making this just yesterday. We'll actually make a table view, which we should probably have named whatever, because we have new data that matters to these now. It's just not whether they're tweeted or not. It's like, does it have a flow? Does it have a conflicting model? Who's going to do it? And that kind of stuff. And this just started to evolve a little bit. So it's nice that we didn't have to tear down an organizational model. We used one that already existed and just kind of changed how we look at it in a different way.
Love it. Love it. Let's check out a couple more questions that came in. And some of these we might have addressed, but I'm moving my stuff from OneNote to Notion, but the process is not as clean as I want. Is there another way to do this and not die in the process?
Well, that's what the people are waiting for the API for, because I'm sure the Notion team is not excited about handwriting migration tools, because that's hard development work. That's why companies build APIs, is because they let other people do the work. Like, well, no, if you really care about OneNote, we'll make the API available for you, and somebody, because this has proven itself to be true forever, they'll write the API to do it for you, or somebody else can even monetize that. Be like, I'll build you a connector and I'll sell it,
And I think also one thing people forget is like, it might be tempting to want to put all your historical data in there too, but you can also start from scratch. Like you don't have to like I didn't import all of my Evernote notes that I've been saving for 10 years. I'm like, that's going to be a mess. And how often have I looked back at them? Very rarely. So, bring in the stuff that's most important, but do you have to bring in everything? Maybe it's okay to have a starting point where you're like, as of June, I'm starting to use Notion moving forward, and I can bring in anything that's useful, but to not worry about actually importing everything. Maybe that's one approach that might reduce the stress of getting all of that moved in.
Yeah, I would hope so. I like that concept.
I think I don't know if we addressed this. Do you have a master project task list that you push out when taking on a new project? That might be related to your,
you kind of get the template and roll with that. I'd listen to you more than you listen to me, though, as I feel like maybe the way we do it with duplicating a document really probably should have been duplicating like a row of a table,
or a template button. I'm surprised your page isn't inside a template button where you can just say like add new project.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, template is, I always think of it as this really cool feature that Notion has, but I admittedly don't reach for it as much as I can. Isn't that, let's see, a template button, because it seems like the benefit of it is that you then use this chunk down here to like put
But you can put a page inside there, and you can also make your page full width if you wanted to. I know some people ask about like, oh, can I, every time you make a new page, it always defaults to that thin view, and some people want to make it full width. So you can actually make whatever page you want, make it full width, and then as long as that's inside your template button, every time you click that button, you're going to have your nice new template.
That's
so
cool.
you could duplicate your project template and just drag it right into that new to-do button and be like, add new project.
And then you don't really need this. That's cool. So, and this,
I mean, it's simple. Like it's more or less doing what you're already doing by duplicating the page, but it's just kind of nice to kind of click that button and there you go.
Yeah, you click that and you got that, rather than having to like right click and go duplicate.
Yeah.
But still, there could be more stuff in here too. Like you could nicely design this, is the point, right? You could, I don't know.
And even like add new employee, right? That like something like that, where the language itself is almost built in to kind of spin up a document. So you could add new employee, but it might be like name, welcome, like it can be a little bit different, right? So you're.
Yeah. Is there limitations in here? Can you get columns going in here?
So yeah, I mean, yes, but you have to, it's like a funny workaround with Notion, right? Where you have to make a page or page with your columns and then turn that into a toggle and then drag the toggle into your.
Yeah, that's a classic old trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
I find it that I just don't do it.
Yeah.
Like I know how to do it, but I'm like, no, if that's what I have to do, I don't even want to do it.
Yeah, it's a goofy workaround for sure.
So it's that, like it literally won't take a column in here.
Yeah, you have to do it like in the page or in the toggle, and then it's
whatever. That's cool though. I should use that more. It's a neat little feature, the template thing. And certainly any page that you're like, there's a lot of churn on it, like make something, delete something, or more like make. The template button is pretty clutch. Pretty cool.
Someone was asking, Jonathan, I'm a beginner in Notion. I still can't understand how I use rollups in my databases. Can you give a simple example? I don't know if Chris has any in his setup right now, but we did do an office hours just a couple weeks ago with William Nutt. It was all about relational databases and rollups. Definitely check that one out because it is.
I don't even know what a rollup is. What's a rollup?
Oh, it's magical, Chris. Oh my gosh. I feel like, as a Cody, you would love this, but I have a weekly agenda that has a relation to my journals. So this week is going to have a journal entry for every day of the week, right? They're related.
Yeah, okay.
So every time I put data in my journal, that's like my happiness, my gratitude, my effectiveness, like I track all of that on a daily basis. And then as I fill it out every day, the weekly properties at the top are like a snapshot of the week. I can see my moods. I can see my physical activity. I can see my effectiveness. I can see all the projects that I worked on. And so that is just all happening automatically with rollups. As long as that connection has been formed with the relations, that's pre-populated. I like that. I rely on rollups a lot in my setup.
I want to learn more about that, because one of the, this is relatively new for us, this idea that we're going to use a database structure for each person to do their weekly notes for what they worked
Yeah.
on. And mine are favorited, so they're just like my top thing. And I come in here just like, oh yeah, what did I do? This is mostly yesterday, and then a little bit of today in here. I actually don't really care what day stuff happened on. This is a week list. I don't want too much structure imparted on me all the time.
Yeah.
This is just a bullet points and stuff I did this week. So, and then I'll flush this out a little bit at the end of the week with some screenshots or more detail or whatever. And then I'll send it around to everybody and they can look at it and comment on just to see what I was up to this week.
Yeah.
But not everybody does it this way. I know that our Marie does it in a table where each day has bullet points on it in the table, and then she can make a filter on the table that has all the relevant days. But that means when I'm like looking at Marie's stuff, I have to click through each day.
Right.
But could there be a roll up of all 7 of those days that like smashes them together somehow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have no idea how that works. Is that a roll up? Is it I use it?
Yeah, it all depends on like how it's been constructed, right? Like you just have date there, but I think I have like, I don't know, 15 different properties there. That's like, what are the, the effectiveness, the journal, even sales. I link it up to my sales database. And because I track sales on a daily level too, anything that I track at the daily level just rolls up to like the month, to the year, so I can like zoom in or zoom out and see whatever data I want at like a really granular or really high level. Not everyone likes to do that necessarily, but I like having that at a weekly view. Like to me, the week is kind of like the ultimate what's on deck this week. So I would personally embed my weekly task database or my master task database inside this weekly agenda. I also embed my meetings, and it's just filtered, like only show meetings that are between June 11th and June 18th, only show tasks that are in this week. So you've got a lot of flexibility, but it becomes this nice snapshot of like what's coming up this week.
Yeah, that's nice.
But
it's
also,
cool the Notion is so powerful and can evolve over time.
Totally.
Because
sometimes simple is better too, though. Like you said, you just want a place you can brain dump and just have some bullets.
I hope I didn't disappoint too many people here. Of Notion for engineers is like you expected me to have all the fancy database secrets here, and we're I don't think we're sloppy, but definitely are very loose in our approach to Notion. But still find it tremendously useful.
Yeah.
I can't imagine operating.
It doesn't need to be. You've proven it doesn't need to be complex. It just needs to work for you, right? So there's endless number of ways you can do it. It's awesome.
Indeed.
Someone said, Marie, is the weekly agenda a database too? Like, do you have yes. So I have a week database. I have a month database. I have my daily journal. So anytime I add a new weekly agenda, that's a template, and each journal has a template too. Like Mondays has a template because there's certain activities I always do on Monday, or if you have like exercise that you always do on Wednesday, or a recurring meeting. So all of that stuff is already built in. So there's like daily templates, weekly templates, monthly templates, and they all kind of trickle up. But that's not the only way to do it. I don't know. I love going pretty nerdy on that stuff.
Yeah, I need to watch more of your stuff. I love these call out blocks.
Yeah.
But they, how you can't like press return out of them. I feel like that could be something that could happen someday.
A little more formatting inside a call out. Yeah.
Yeah, I want like a colored block. That but I don't. But I want it to like maybe even support other blocks inside of it or something, because it feels very limited.
So, I mean, I don't know if you've done this, but one of the workarounds for that is to have a toggle, but then delete the toggle. So you can actually...
Oh, yeah. Let's try that trick.
So let's do a toggle, open the toggle.
Yeah. And then
toggle? Put whatever you want in there. Give the toggle a background.
Yeah.
So not the one inside it, but actually the toggle.
Oh, the toggle itself.
So give that a background. And then delete toggle, but you have to like hit backspace.
Yeah, and then one more time on backspace.
Yep. And now you've got, and you can put whatever you want in there. You can do columns.
Oh, but you can't get rid of the top line.
No, you can't. Yeah, there's like it basically becomes
backgrounds.
Yeah,
it works. How cool is that? And then can you duplicate it and columnize it from there? Oh, it maintains its little quirk.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Sick. That's a good trick. I'm gonna
now you can put your call outs inside of there, and you can do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know what you'd call that block. Maybe that just needs to be a trick forever,
Yeah. what it's.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh, someone asked, any researchers or academics using Notion? Iranti, we actually do have a Notion for academic session coming up soon. So hopefully that should be enjoyable for you. About databases, how can I eliminate information that I don't need? Maybe because you can have a lot of unnecessary info. I mean, you can delete those properties. I mean, you can delete any properties after you've created them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's almost a little too easy.
Yeah, a little too easy to delete stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, some of the other questions are around, mobile. What are reviews on the mobile Notion app? Why is it so trashy and slow compared to the full version on my Mac? Do you ever use Notion on your phone?
My phone? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my percentage is probably, I don't know, under 25% on my phone, maybe,
Yeah.
But I like that. I feel like remember when I mentioned like, oh, on Product Hunter, I think that's what it was almost pitched as originally. This Notion was this amazing notes app for your phone. Like that's
Right.
almost like I don't know if that's true, if it's just a feeling I have, but it feels like that was kind of like an early target for them, was like making sure the phone app was really good. And it feels like it is. Like it's very first class citizen.
Yeah. Like it doesn't, I know people complain about the quick add, it's not maybe like Bear or like maybe some of the other apps that feel very quick in terms of quickly adding tasks. But I personally haven't experienced that kind of slowness on mobile, unless I know some folks, if they are opening a pretty large database on your phone too, I often will try to default it to a really simplified view, like just show me the last 7 days. And I do feel like that kind of speeds things up a little bit.
Oh, that's kind of clever. Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's usually just like, oh, I just need to look at something quick. It's not like deep work in my phone app, but
Yeah.
everybody's different that way.
Yeah. I think I only use it for entering my journal entry at the end of the day too. I'll be like sitting on the couch and just putting my journal properties in there. Yeah. Any other questions that we didn't cover? Anyone wants to know? I mean, I think we covered quite a bit of it. I know it's a little tricky without really showing behind the scenes and kind of digging into the specifics, which can be a little bit tricky when you can't show, private stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I hope people don't feel too cheated here. We don't have that much that you didn't see, like the
Yeah,
Spark,
yeah.
our publishing schedule looks just like the CSS-Tricks one. The podcast is the same way too, challenges is just kind of like, we don't plan even that far ahead. But what's kind of cool about these is that we work with other companies on them. So I can have like a document that represents the challenges for that month. And this is probably like way more sloppy than how you do it, but whatever, it works for us. Week 1, week 2, week 3. And then I can share it with people outside the company, and they can come in here and edit these things. Which is just tremendously useful for us, and it still lives in the state. It still has a nice organizational concept.
Have you ever had any resistance when you're sharing some of those documents with folks that maybe didn't already have a Notion account, or they're like, what is this?
Once in a while, but I it's like I couldn't like power play on them. I'm like, oh, you don't want to deal with it? Oh, then whatever. I don't want to deal with you. Like I can't. I'm not gonna like change my whole stuff to work in a Google spreadsheet just because you don't want to.
If you don't use Notion, we can't be friends.
Yeah, not like terrible, but it's like it's rare. But it's always like a power. If somebody's gonna, if they're a big client, they're gonna give you lots of money. Oh yeah, I'll work in whatever you want. You want me to buy an Android phone so I can use some whatever? I'll buy it. But then if it's the other way around, then it's me being like, no, you're gonna work in my app.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
That's awesome. So someone, Gail said, if saying I feel cheated means the session will go longer, okay, I feel cheated. Tough but fair. That's funny. No, I think this is great. Like, I think, I know we had a couple beginners in here too who are kind of like, oh my gosh, this is already overwhelming, and we're not even using, relational databases and rollups and stuff. So I do think it takes, there's that learning curve. It takes a little bit of time. For some people, it clicks really fast. For other people, they're like, why doesn't this work the way I think it should work? And it can be a little daunting at the beginning. But I often tell people, like, just make a sandbox page and just start. You just have to start playing a little bit, right? Clicking, what does this button do? What happens if I click this? What does a table look like? You kind of have to mess around a little bit.
Yeah. And everybody makes you probably already use something, right? So what is that something you already used for these little these little scratch pad notes you have, like maybe that's an entry point too, is
Yeah.
if you have enough of them in there, you'd be like, what could I do to organize these?
Yeah, and I think like you were saying, maybe that your documentation was the one thing that you were like, oh, we didn't really have a place yet, or the wikis, like it didn't quite make sense over here.
Yeah.
So like starting with one use case to kind of design around, I think is a good place to start.
Right. It certainly helped. The Teams thing does shine for me. I mean, I know for you, you have a lot of personal stuff going on, which is pretty rad, but it really shines. I use it like 10 times more for team stuff than I do for my
Yeah.
my
Do you think
personal.
there's like a team size limit where it could start to get a little bit unwieldy? Like, do you think there's sort of like a magic sort of size?
That's a good question. I think we're well under it. Like I think that it would get more useful the more people we had for a while. Because for example, I can't even open the settings tab because the settings tab shows people's emails immediately upon clicking it, because that's how that's designed, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's just not good for video. It has like this concept of groups, which is a wonderful thing to have in there. We don't even use it because we're just 7 people. There's not like a design team, but I think that's how it was
Right.
kind of built, is that you could have a financial team and a development team and stuff, and then it's easier to share things between people on those teams and manage that sharing. The sharing is so good in Notion of who has access to what at this nested level is awesome. And we don't take advantage of it. We're too small to. So I
Mm.
think, my guess is that it works pretty great, at least up to 50, maybe 100. But Microsoft sure can't do it in one workspace. You'd have to do it on a team level.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. I know we've like gone a little bit over, so I just wanted to say, thank you for
Sure.
being willing to stay and show us all of these different parts of your space. Now we've got a couple questions in here, but we're probably probably have to address them in future episodes. Yeah, someone asked about graduate research or academia groups. That is coming up, so don't worry. Again, we try to cover many different use cases: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and so there's plenty more upcoming. And I think next week's is Notion for freelancers. So if you're a freelancer, consultant, we're going to show you a couple spaces that are related to that use case. So definitely keep an eye, click on that Notion icon in the top right, and you can see future episodes that are coming up. These are always recorded. They're always posted to YouTube after, so you can check out the replay anytime. And yeah, Chris, where can people find you online? What's the best place to kind of keep on top of what you're working on?
Oh, sure. I mean, my name's Chris Coyer, and I use that as my handle everywhere. So that's me on Twitter. chriscoyer.net is my personal website that links to my stuff. That's me on Dribble. That's me on CodePen. That's me everywhere. I'm pretty easy to find.
You can Google your name and come across a number of different places
Sure.
to find you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on today. This is awesome.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. And teaching me, really.
Woohoo. Yeah, it'd be fun to go in and like spring clean your setup. I'm like, ooh, here's what I would love to do to your setup. But it works for you, right?
There should be a cottage industry for that. Or at least you already have it going, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for coming. This was really awesome. Thanks, Chris. Have a great weekend, everyone, and have fun in your Notion spaces.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Bye.